clear communication is a key to unlock so many good things. And just like in any healthy relationship, understanding the people that are on your team and how they prefer to be talked to. Like our system, once you actually throw people into the assessment platform and everybody on your team's on it, and it actually emails you every single day little tidbits on how you can communicate better to the people that you're going to be meeting with. Because again, it's about, if God's in the dream, the devil's in the details.
From humble beginnings, Insurance Claim HQ has grown to one of the largest property casualty firms in the country. We didn't do it alone, and you shouldn't either. Every week, we're talking to claims professionals and top experts from all over, all to help you grow your business and make you stronger. Let's level up together. I'm Galen Hair. Welcome to the Level Up Claims Podcast. So many leaders grind away at endless to-do lists, only to find their strategy still falls flat. The problem isn't the effort, it's the foundation. When strategy isn't connected to true vision and identity, it collapses under its own weight. Our guest today, Michael King, is a leadership coach who helps executives and organizations flip the script. Instead of chasing tasks, he teaches them to build a rock-solid to-be list, anchoring strategy and identity, vision, and structure, so the execution actually works. Stick around as Michael unpacks why most strategies fail, how to realign around who you are, and the steps to finally create a plan you can trust. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Galen, for having me.
So we interview a lot of people on this podcast that do kind of coaching, strategic leadership, things like that. And everyone seems to have a different path to how they got to where they are. So how did Michael King become Michael King?
Before I became an executive coach, I was an executive pastor. So I've been serving people for decades. And, I was the executive pastor, or the number 2 in one of America's fastest growing churches here in the Midwest. And I started to feel just those dynamics and feeling the opportunity to be able to serve at a greater context by being invited to some different circles. I upped my education. I started exploring the idea of like, what would it mean for me to be able to serve people outside of the local church? And boy, I'm so glad that I started addressing some of those things, because what I found was that the context of team dynamics and leadership dynamics in the church, it can be incredibly complicated. And it's such a valuable base for me to be able to launch from, because it is so complicated. And so what I found is that even as I'm serving Fortune 500 leaders and global organizations and bigger brands, I still have yet to find leadership dynamics that are more complicated than the things that I encountered within the church dynamic. So I feel a specific calling to it, even though it's chaotic at times, but I love the transformational work that I get to do.
And, it's pretty interesting. So a lot of us that might be listening to the podcast have worked with a lot of churches in the past, just because they tend to be heavily affected by a big storm or a big loss. And often they have trouble navigating that, partially because of their, let's call them, interesting leadership dynamics. You're mixing, you've got a pastor who, depending on the particular denomination, the church leader might not really run the church. There might be an entire other organization running the church. And then you've got your mix of volunteer / paid employees, and some of those have various levels of power. And it gets very complicated, to say the least.
Very much, yeah.
So one of the things our listeners have to do when they want to do church work, and if you're listening at home and want to do church work and have never done it, I will give you a free tip, which is you have to figure out how the church is actually run and who actually is in control and is making the decisions, because you were wasting your time otherwise, because there will always be a dynamic that you can't appreciate if you don't know how the church is structured, and that will prevent you from getting hired on day one. But so that's so interesting that you kind of come from that background, and that makes sense, because one of the things you say, and now your church background makes more sense, is if God is in the dream, the devil's in the details. So what caused you to kind of coin that phrase and come up with that as one of the things that you push with your coaching students?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so outside of the church space, we've been, the one thing that I've experienced about team dynamics is that the one thing that every leader has in common is that if you've ever been on a bad team before, you know that you never want to do it again. And it can be so traumatic, and it can be so, validating too at the same time for you to be able to understand like what you've just walked through, the pain experiences, things like that. And so like leaning into the whole, like, if God is in the dream, the devil's in the details. For me, like faith is a big perspective shift for me. I try to look through the lens of faith a lot, but never actually leading from a place of trying to force my faith on people. I want to be clear about that I stay in my lane on that, really clear. But there is something about this to where it's like, working with leaders, for example, we have a very exhaustive assessment platform in which so every leader that works with us, we find out whether they're on the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, DISC, Strength Finders, etc. We have it all built into our leadership dashboard for our leaders, right? And what we found is that, like, there is a profile that moves fast, that is pretty disruptive, and that is very commonplace within organizations that are successful. Like, we know who those people are. And what we find, like, say, for example, like within the church context or even in a stronger company, like if you're a 7 on the Enneagram, or maybe even an 8, maybe even a 1, what you're going to find is that you're going to want to move fast. You're going to want to have really big dreams. You want to have a lot of autonomy with the people that are on your team. You'll say things like this: destination, non-negotiable. We want to make sure that we're going in the right direction. We want to make sure we're hitting our goals. But journey, completely negotiable. Meaning that those types of leaders, they recognize that that in order for them to get the results that they want, they have to be somewhat hands off, right? Is that they can't micromanage and be in the process, but they have to have the dream mechanism locked in. They have to have the vision of where they're going 100% clear. And so when I say things like, if God's in the dreams, the devil's in the details, it's because of this, is that the temperament of the leaders that I get to work with, these are fast-paced, really talented leaders that can dream bigger than you could ever dream. In fact, their visions are things that are probably going to scare the crap out of you. Great. That's the type of leader that I want to work with. But I also have to bring them down to reality every single day, is that details matter and strategy matters. And what's the gateway to effective strategy? Effective structure. And so that's important.
That's interesting. The gateway to effective strategy is effective structure. So let's talk about that, because you mentioned a whole battery of assessments. What assessments do you do, and why did you choose them?
Yeah, the one that we do, and I'll be more than happy even off grid if you want to see our assessment platform. It's pretty impressive. But we do everything from Myers-Briggs and DISC to Strength Finders to the Enneagram. Enneagram is the one that's the non-negotiable before I start working with anybody. The reason is because I want to know what motivates you. I know that by a certain way that we use the Enneagram, we can actually tell whether somebody's actually in a right fit or a right role within the organization based off of their Enneagram. And so I think, again, so effective communication and realistic expectations are the keys to unlock some really great things. And I think a lot of times, especially when you're working with team dynamics, a really fast way for you to fail is by you having people in the wrong seats, and by you having really unrealistic expectations for how that person could perform. This is a really nerdy conversation, isn't it? Like, we're getting right into it.
I love it. It's look, one of the things we've pushed on this podcast before is the importance of assessments, and that I think one thing, and look, it's a style. It doesn't sound like it's your style, and it's an okay style. But I feel like there's so many people that want to talk about leadership in terms of like almost one size fits all. Everyone should do this. And there certainly, I believe, are some things like that. But I don't know how in today's world with AI and computers and technology, anyone could say, I have no desire for objective, and even though it's somewhat subjective, for objective criteria to know what I need to do next. And the motivation thing is big for me. I want to know what motivates my team. We actually test our entire team on a different platform, but again, it's for motivation, because motivation is so important. So I love hearing that. So can you give us an example of how you've kind of been able to make a pivot, or coach someone to make a pivot based on the results of that motivation-based assessment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this comes into play all the time too, by the way. So, and it also has a massive effect on culture too, by the way. Like we can pull up the Enneagram grid for a whole organization. And so our assessment platform allows us to have full teams on to where I can take a look at it and I can actually see that 75% are in the gut triad, 3% are in the, in the head triad, 15% are in the head triad. And for those that don't know what those things are, gut leaders move fast, head leaders make all their decisions based off of logic, heart leaders make all their decisions based off of emotion and consensus type of things, right? And I can actually tell you where the high levels of tension and the high levels of emotional turbulence are within the organization based off of how the whole organization plays out on the Enneagram. And so I was actually on a coaching call with a client with an architecture firm that we work with the other day. And he calls me up and he said, hey, we got this problem in this office. And we have one employee that's an outlier that seems to be incredibly dissatisfied, causing quite a bit of ruckus. We need a coaching plan for them. And before they even told me who it was, I pulled up their dashboard and I said, is it so-and-so? And he was like, yeah. Like out of the 100 and some people in our team, how did you say that? And I was like, it screams like this person, the way that they're an outlier, they're going to feel isolated. They're going to feel incredibly different than everybody else on the team because they are so much different than everybody else on the team. So in order for you to have realistic expectations of the people that are on your team, you have to know your team. You have to understand them. And in order for you to understand, these assessments are incredibly helpful for you to be able to have realistic expectations and also making sure that they get in the right role. So huge. Have you seen the movie Moneyball?
Absolutely.
Right. This is like a Moneyball conversation.
It sure is.
It really is. And I think that's, again, so for people that haven't seen Moneyball, it's a fantastic movie with Brad Pitt. But the common question is that when he hires Jonah Hill to be his operations guy, his strategy statistics guy for the Oakland A's, it comes down to this one question. Okay, what is the one thing it takes in order for us to win ball games? And it turns out the answer to that equation is, let's get on first base.
Yeah.
So they hired, based on a very, very limited budget, a bunch of people that could get on first base, and they used data and they used assessments. We do it exactly the same way. Like we take some of the most disruptive team environments and we go, okay, cool. Let's make sure that these people are actually in the right roles based on who they are, what they can do organically, and how they can actually be rock stars within this company. Because I tell people this all the time. I'm the executive coach that doesn't eliminate people from your team. I'm the one that elevates them. And I love that. Well,
and that brings me to my next question. We will do the to-be list because it's really important and I want to cover it. But you've got me enthused. Okay, so that brings me to my question, because I have a theory that people that are listening at home right now are hesitant to do these assessments because many leaders, whether they're gut, head, or heart, still have this fear, especially if they built a business from the ground up, that they have who they consider to be valuable team members. And I think they don't want to test them or assess them because they're worried that it might lead to the conclusion that person must leave. And you just indicated that's not necessarily the answer. So this architecture firm with this outlier, what's the solution? Do we just cut this person because they're an outlier? What do we do?
No, not at all. Again, it's like, so I mentioned this kind of at the beginning, but clear communication is a key to unlock so many good things. And just like in any healthy relationship, understanding the people that are on your team and how they prefer to be talked to, like our system, once you actually throw people into the assessment platform and everybody on your team's on it, it syncs up with your Outlook or your Google Calendar, and it actually emails you every single day little tidbits on how you can communicate better to the people that you're going to be meeting with. Because again, it's about, if God's in the dream, the devil's in the details. It always comes down to these small little things that you somehow you overlook it because you want, so for me, I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. I'm a challenger. I am somebody I'm fast moving. I'm a high level visionary. I want to go fast. And so one size fits all leadership are things that basically people like me would have said before I got educated on these things. Right. But now I understand, okay, great. So somebody who's working, my creative director, by the way, he's a completely different type of person. I had him take the assessments because I want to know, okay, what is it going to take in order for me to make this guy feel incredibly valuable? Because if he feels valuable on my team, I'm going to get 110% out of him, versus for him not feeling valuable, then he's only going to show up and give me bare minimum. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes sense.
And so with this person that was on the outlier, it wasn't necessarily like I needed him to know, hey, I just want to let you know, like the way that you feel, you're not broken. You're not messed up. Like you're you. And I don't want you to gaslight yourself. I want you to understand yourself. Because here's the thing is I think a lot of times leaders, when it comes to these assessments, I think that they can lean away from them a little bit because they don't want to put people in boxes. Tell people this all the time. Have people take these assessments not for diagnosis, but for understanding. And do it regularly. Get in a regular, consistent cadence to where every 6 months you're hitting, reset on a couple of these assessments to see how things have changed, because environments do affect everything. And so if you're improving your communication, if you're improving your culture, there's a good chance that your Enneagram even might change over a period of 6 months to a year.
I love that. I think that's a really important point, and I think that people tend to miss that. Look, I'm all for one size fits all leadership if it actually worked. But I've never bought, in all fairness, I've never bought a one size fits all thing that actually fit well.
Yeah. And I have and because of my church background, and because I have great memories of being a leader in the local church, and I have some traumatic memories that have to do with some narcissistic behavior from senior leaders. And I think that there's a really big difference between indoctrination and leadership. And I think we need to be really clear as far as what type of systems we're building.
I love that. So let's talk about this list, because I referenced it before we started the podcast. I referenced it just now on the podcast. One of the things, and I've had an opportunity to read and watch a lot of your content, you talk about the to-be list versus the to-do list. What is that concept generally?
It's a framework that I use in my one-on-one coaching. And, we have a couple different frameworks that we use. We have our team's methodology, which is our weekly scorecard for all team members in all organizations. But then the to-be list is a really great way to start off just kind of understanding and being able to help somebody unlock, whether it's working on their personal brand and really diagnosing where they're at in the journey of like discovering, okay, what's working, what's not working, where do we have to put in some maintenance, some development work, right? So, do you know what type of Enneagram you are?
I don't. We use something called Print.
Okay, great. I'll send you a link so you can take it and check it out. It's pretty interesting. But most leaders start off their day like this, though, that I work with, is they start off, their alarm clock goes off in the morning. Are you iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Okay, good. Lord be with you. Peace and blessings. I'm just messing with you. I'm a little bit mad at Apple right now, just because every time they come out with a new phone, somehow everything before it seems to break.
Oh, you noticed that, huh? Me too. Yeah, I have the brand new one because suddenly my phone wouldn't hold the charge for longer than 2 hours.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I've been literally. It seems like my phone has kind of normalized over the last couple weeks now. So anyway, you wake up in your morning, your alarm clock maybe goes off at 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock, maybe even a little bit later. But the first thing you do is you reach over, you grab your iPhone, you shut off your alarm. And before you even get out of bed, you start looking at all your commitments for the day. You look at your calendar. You're like, okay, what's in store today? Can you relate to that at all?
I lived that life, but I do not do that anymore.
Okay, good. But here's the thing is that I think that everybody can relate to this idea is that there's nothing more painful in life than being busy and having a lot of strategy and tactics going on a day-to-day basis, but you're not seeing the needle move.
Yeah.
You just kind of get stuck. It feels like this malaise. And what we found is that most leaders that we work with, the reason why their strategy, the things that they do every single day, is because it's not connected to the vision. Somehow you just got caught of saying, okay, I'm not necessarily measuring anymore. I'm just doing things because I just know how to do them. This is what comes naturally to me. This is where I'm putting my time. I've forgotten what my vision was. I forgot what my 2 to 3 year plan was. I forgot what my 5-year scope was. And so I'm just doing stuff today, and I'm not measuring it, and I'm not making decisions as far as whether I should be doing these things or not. So that's the to-do list side of it. But when you think about these 4 words in this specific order, I think that you see how this plays out. So we start off with identity, then we go to vision. So identity, okay, what are the things that you're great at? What do you want to be known for? What do you do better than anyone else? What is the biggest problem that you solve? And how do you want to make people feel? Those are your identity questions. And I think a lot of times we start every single day, rather than starting off with that to-be list, we start off in that strategy bucket of going with our to-do list. But that to-be list is the most important 4 questions that every single leader should answer, because you can't answer the other 3 questions, or you can't move to the other three sequences until you actually are very, very clear and locked in on those 4 or 5 questions in the to-be list. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it's such a different concept, right? Because I think we get stuck in to-do lists all day.
Yep.
Even if we try not to make them, we get stuck in them. We make them in our personal life. We make them in our work life. They get made for us in both of those lives. And we spend all day on a treadmill. And the business, we have run a very long way, but the business has not moved forward a bit.
Yeah. And and so it's like, we do this exercise with just like totally going old fashioned. Like we have all this stuff automated through our app and all that stuff as well. But like, I love just putting up these sticky notes that have the answers to these questions on it, just in places to where I need to be reminded. So, okay, who am I? What do I do better than anyone else? Answer that question honestly, by the way. Don't give me fake humility. That's boring, but it's like, step up with boldness. What is the thing that you do better than anyone else? What's the biggest problem that you solve? And then how do you want to make people feel? Okay, great. Now we can go on to the vision bucket. Okay, great. 2 to 3 years. What's the type of impact that you want to make? What do you want to be known for? What's your goals? Like, don't just give me revenue, give me dreams. Does that make sense?
It does.
And then we get into structure. Okay, who do you need to have on your team? Who do you need to invite along in the journey? Who needs to be your 5 loudest voices? And then we get to strategy. See, because that's the thing, as I told you at the very beginning of this thing, is like unlocking healthy structure is always your gateway to effective strategy. The reason why your strategies aren't working is not because of a lack of idea or lack of energy. The reason why your strategies aren't working is because you don't have the right team. You don't have the right people and the right voices in your life.
That makes sense. And I think identity is a harder thing than it sounds too, for a lot of people. Let's talk about that. Obviously you have to be honest. Don't use humility, but I think also on the flip side, I think we live in a world of what I would call borrowed identity. And I think you talk about that a little bit too. Talk a little bit about why borrowed identity it doesn't work within this process.
Well, you have to be true to the things that you love. And I think when you aren't in touch with who you are, you start to run off of plays that you see work for other people, and you start building brands that are famous for other people. Like for me as an executive coach, like I've navigated this, like I have struggled with this so much, and it's kind of embarrassing. So, but even just this last year, now I've been coaching leaders for a couple decades, but this last year has been a big unlock for me, and it's been fun. Because what a lot of people don't know about me is I'm a professional musician. I'm an accomplished multi-instrumentalist. I produce artists and produce records for record labels.
Oh.
I was a singer-songwriter in the Christian music industry. But when I felt like when I walked away from church work, I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the music thing on the shelf, and I'll never touch it again. And then all of a sudden, as a keynote speaker, more and more times than not, like all of a sudden, like little things would pop out saying, okay, why don't you use a little bit of this thing in your thing that you're doing, Well, when I brought my creative director on at the very beginning of the year, he's been such a wonderful addition to my team. But he specifically said, man, like, I don't know why this isn't a main thing that you're doing. Like this is a different, like being smart in the executive coaching space isn't a differentiator. There's a million smart people out there, but who else has like a recording contract that could put out music that could literally like really impact the way people look at themselves and look at the world? And I'm like, all right, cool. Let's go, man. Let's go. Let's do it. And so it's been fun, but in that identity bucket, I was thinking, okay, who are my main competitors? Like not competitors, but people that I look up to that are in the space. Okay. It's like Simon Sinek. It's like Patrick Lencioni. It's like Henry Cloud, like some really, really great John Maxwell, like really great leaders. Well, I don't want to, I'm not going to, there's like when people work with me, like they get absolutely killer results, but I don't want them to, I'm not interested in trying to compete with a Patrick Lencioni, for Pete's sake. You know what I mean? But what makes me different?
No,
I got to be able to put something.
Even if you're at that same level, like I think, again, we live in a world where everyone imitates each other. That's become, especially now, it's even getting worse with AI and stuff, right? Because now you can go in AI and be like, build me a website and use these through, and it like kind of picks the top 3 websites and recreates the website. And now you have a brand that's like very much in line with all the other competitive brands, right? And I think in a world of identity dilution.
Oh, good. That's so good.
Coming up with really refining your identity is worth its weight in gold, because then you walk through these other steps, the vision, the structure, the strategy. And I just think that I don't want to say it takes care of itself, because it's not, and that would be demeaning to what you do for a living. But I think the steps become easier if you know who you truly are.
And that's the thing, is that we spend so much time on the to-be list, so much time finding out truth and finding out clarity and really kind of wrestling through like the inner clouds and the inner fogs that sometimes the loud voices that are screaming at you, telling you something completely different, right? And because this is that if we can figure out how you can be in touch with your authentic self, the sky's the limit. But if you're just running karaoke leadership, you're going to fail, especially in 2025.
I cannot agree more. Michael, we're going to put all your info in the show notes, if that's okay, because I think there are going to be some listeners that could really benefit. Guys, if you're listening at home and you're interested in kind of getting out of a to-do list phase of your business and your leadership and more into to be and making sure that your strategy is locked in to really go where you want to go over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to put some information on Michael in the show notes. So please feel free to reach out to him. Michael, you've been amazing with your time today. I appreciate it. Before you go, though, I do have to ask you, what would it mean to you? What does it mean to you to level up?
Self-awareness and being absolutely locked in, showing yourself a lot of grace, but being honest with yourself as far as where your gaps are, and being committed every single day to do one thing in the right direction as far as just being honest with who you are and where the areas that you can personally grow. That's the type of level up leaders I look for in my team. But more importantly, that's the type of level of behavior that I look for in myself.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, Galen, you're great. Thanks so much for having me.
I'd like to thank Michael King for joining us on the show. I think he said it best. Karaoke leadership doesn't help you move your business forward from a strategy standpoint. We've all fallen into that, where we just do tasks just to do them, instead of actually move our business forward in a strategic way. We should really all follow Michael's advice and do more being instead of doing. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player.